guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, welcome and thank you for finding us. Hope you like this video. I hope you like Hong Kong cinema. If you do like it, you can give us a sub and that would be much appreciated. Thank you so much. You can give us a thumbs up and you can give us a comment. So let's jump right into this video. You probably already know what we're talking about because it's right there on the screen behind me. Hell yeah, it's Magnificent Warriors. This is the Eureka Entertainment release. Now, this did come out in February of 2023, so I'm a little bit late reviewing this. The reason being that because of the issues with the Royal Mail in the UK, stuff was not shipping from the UK to the US. So I just got this like a week or so ago. And I'm really excited to review it. That film came out in 1987. It was directed by David Chung, and it stars Michelle Yeoh. I wrote the whole cast down here. But it's got Michelle Yeoh, it's got Richard who you know I love. It's got Derek Yee. It's got Lo Lo, Cindy Lau, Huang John Lee. It was produced by John Shum, who is awesome and amazing, and I talked about him recently, and he's got an amazing interview on, I believe, the Royal Warriors Blu-ray release, which also stars Michelle Yeoh and is also directed by David Chung from Eureka Entertainment. Go check out that interview. It's incredible. He's an actor who you'll recognize from movies like Wheels on Meals and Yes, Madam and stuff like that. The Pom Pom series, who produced like 50 movies and was one of the founders of D&B Films and did all this incredible stuff behind the scenes, but I always kind of knew him as an actor. To give you an in a nutshell review of this, there's no reason not to get this release, and there's no reason not to see this movie. I had never seen this film before, and I'm kicking myself for that because it's really kind of stupid, because it is a very famous kind of film within the kind of Hong Kong cinema fandom community. I wrote down while I was watching the movie that it's basically the perfect 1980s Hong Kong action adventure popcorn film. Like, there's nothing not to love about it. It's just pure entertainment from start to finish. It never lags. There's like nothing about it is bad. If you like these movies, you will like this movie, and this is a fantastic release. That's my in a nutshell review. To get further into it, let me just show you the physical kind of packaging here, and then I'll get into kind of my thoughts on the film. It was, again, my first time seeing it, and then I'll talk about the bonus material and stuff like that. I want to show you the reversible artwork here because it's awesome. Yes, I love this. This is amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. And that's the back. And here's the disc. And there you have the booklet. And the booklet has an essay in it by James Oliver. And this is a really interesting essay. You know, so this film, if you're unaware, is very Indiana Jones. Like, it's basically an Indiana Jones ripoff, right? In the best possible way. But what James Oliver talks about in this essay is the long history of Hong Kong movies taking elements from other films, but still making very original, unique, interesting, fantastic, likable movies. And so it's a really cool essay, and you'll learn about, you know, other titles in this long tradition of doing this. I love the way they include the posters here. And I mean, to give you an idea of the plot of this film, if you're unfamiliar, if you haven't seen it before, Derek Yee, who is that guy right there, and I'll talk about Derek Yee in a second here, he plays a secret agent who is undercover in, I believe, Bhutan, which is in the Himalayas, during the kind of Sino-Japanese War, which was the war between Japan and China that made up the Pacific theater of World War II. Of course, the U.S. became involved in that too, and then it became World War II. It was originally the Sino-Japanese War. And so the Japanese have taken over this city in Bhutan because they want to make a chemical factory so that they can make poison gas. And the guy who's in charge of the city is kind of like the mayor type of guy. He is cooperating with the Chinese, essentially. He's telling them Japanese secrets and stuff like that because he doesn't like the Japanese. He wants to help them. And he gets discovered, so they need to get him out. So Michelle Yeoh plays a pilot. There she is. And her favorite weapon to use is a whip. And she wears a leather coat. But it's interesting because both her and Derek Yee play characters who are very Indiana Jones. It's like having two Indiana Jones is in the same movie and they have like a pretty strong romantic attraction to one another. It's actually pretty fun. So she's a pilot. So she gets sent to this city in Bhutan to basically get the guy out, extradite him. but not officially in a political extradition way. Extract him. That's the word I was looking for. She gets sent in to get him out, basically, so that he's safe, so that the Japanese don't kill him or torture him or whatever, right? And so it's a very like kind of fun adventure movie. I want to talk a little bit about the cast before I go, and the crew, cast and crew, before I get deep into my thoughts on this movie. When I watched Royal Warriors, I was really amazed by David Chung's ability as a director. That was only his second movie, I think. And it's so controlled. It's so well put together. Such a great emphasis on character, but it's so well directed, like from a technical perspective of the craft elements of visual storytelling. And this movie is exactly the same. He's such a good, patient, controlled filmmaker who uses the tools the tool set he needs in every single scene to best tell the story of that scene in the context of the overall story. So Frank Jang said he was a cinematographer of a bunch of very noteworthy films. So I did some snooping around, and I also listened to Frank Jang's commentary track on here. Here are movies that he shot as a cinematographer: Boat People, Nomad, Esprit d'Amour, An Autumn's Tale, Painted Faces, My Heart is That Eternal Rose, God of Gamblers, Once Upon a Time in China. So as a cinematographer, this dude worked with An Hui, Patrick Tam, who is Wong Kar-wai's mentor, Ringo Lam, Choi Hawk, Wu Jing, like basically the biggest names in the industry. And a lot of these films are being produced by people like Sammo Hung, and like, so yeah, it makes a lot of sense that he's really great as a director in his early films, because he is a visual designer as a cinematographer and has worked with some of the best visual designers in the history of Hong Kong cinema. So that's really kind of incredible. Second unit and third unit and fourth unit directors on this film. Are you ready for this? Second unit director was Johnny To, as with Royal Warriors. John Shum was the third unit director who produced the film and, like I said, was an actor and stuff like that. Derek Yee was the fourth unit director. So Derek Yee is in this film as an actor. And his brothers were both very famous, and he was in Shaw Brothers films. That was how he started his career. He was an actor. He was in Death Duel, Black Lizard, Sentimental Swordsman, Shaolin Prince, Buddha's Palm, and all kinds of like old school martial arts movies. But then, as a director, he made People's Hero, Full Throttle with Andy Lau, Viva Erotica, which was recently released by Connie Films, I believe, which is a Vinegar Syndrome partner label, One Night in Mongkok, which won a bunch of awards at the Hong Kong Film Awards. David, who's in that movie? Is it David Wu? It's a really good movie. And it's this kind of dark thriller drama. I saw that movie maybe like 5 years ago. I really liked it. And Shinjuku Incident with Jackie Chan. Okay, so that's the level of talent you have involved in this film. So it's no wonder that it's just a freaking awesome movie. I cannot emphasize enough how entertaining this movie is. It is so fun. Like, this movie moves like gangbusters. I say that a lot. I thought I was 15 minutes into this movie and I paused it and it was halfway done. Like, it is so quick. It's never boring. It's never off target. There's never a scene where you go off into some weird subplot that doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just go, go, go. The fight scenes in this movie are fantastic. There's an my computer screen is darkening here. We want to have this in all its glory behind me. There's an interview with the action director on here, and he talks about how they wanted to use longer takes in the action scenes instead of cut on every move to really show off the fighting, and they built these ornate sets, the scenery, like the complexity of the design of the fight scenes in here. There's one fight scene where there's like, if I'm not mistaken, there's a motorcycle, a Jeep, torches, grenades, machine guns, like just bananas, like driving, fighting, jumping, stunts and fighting everywhere. It's like a nighttime driving scene. Stuff is blowing up. Things are catching on fire. It's really, really incredible spectacle. Like, if you love spectacle action films, there's a great camaraderie in the cast, and it has a very kind of like the gang's all here type. It's a very 80s movie, we talk about kid gangs with 80s movies like E.T. and the Goonies and stuff like that, but a lot of those 80s movies had this sense of like this gang of really tightly knit characters, right? Like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, you have Indy, excuse me, and then he goes to Egypt, and there's his contact in Egypt, and there's his ex, right, who's the son of the guy who did the research for the Nazis, and like these characters kind of build these little kind of families in a way, and that's a very Spielberg. This movie is very Spielberg. not just Indiana Jones, but it has a very Spielberg sense of humor. There's a lot of things about it that's very 80s Spielberg. However, I will say it's very 80s Jackie and Samo too. Like it kind of reminded me in parts of Millionaire Express and like those other Samo movies where you have comedy and action and kind of spectacle and adventure all mixed together. And then the fight scenes, there was kind of this Jackie sense of like anarchic comedy mixed with like threat and violence. It's just a really, like, I don't need to keep saying it's really fun and come up with 1,000 intellectualized ways to say it's really fun, because the bottom line about this movie is it is preposterously fun. That's it. So to review the release itself, there's a 6-minute interview with Michelle Yeoh, which is really cool. She said it was the toughest film she ever made. She never wanted to do action movies again after it. It was supposed to be a 3-week shoot. It took 3 months, and she was just training every day. She was getting injured. She talks about, too, which is really interesting, being on the set of Hong Kong films and how they're like very intense because everyone does everything and knows how to do everything, and it's a very high level of competency, and the speed at which things happen is so fast. Whereas on a Hollywood movie, she's like, you get like endless amounts of time to like drink coffee and think about your character and the scene, and because there's like, they take hours to set the shots and to set the lights and to do all this stuff, and like you have a lot more downtime. And it's not as intense. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of comparison there. And then, like I said, the action director, there's a 12-minute interview with him. He talks about Michelle Yeoh getting injured on this film. He's known Michelle Yeoh for years and years, like years before they were both in the film industry together. They knew each other. Like when she first started out doing, I think he said he met her when she first started doing stuff in Singapore, like commercials and stuff like that. Emphasis on long shots, like I said, and he talks about just how he designs action. Like he didn't want characters to have personal styles of fighting like you see in older martial arts films where they're differentiated by like, I do snake style, I do crane style. Like he didn't want to do that. He wanted to have like a unified style of fighting throughout the whole film. So just really interesting behind the scenes information like that. And then commentary tracks. I love the commentary tracks. You know I do. I always talk about them. Mike and Arna, there's a lot of alternate titles to this movie. It's pretty funny to hear them talk about the alternate titles. One thing they talk about that's really interesting is this movie came out the year after Royal Warriors, but there's a discussion about how this was maybe shot first and it was in post-production for so long that it came out afterwards. So they talk about whether or not that's true and like that kind of stuff. I'm trying to read my own handwriting. Oh, Easy Money is a movie that Michelle Yeoh made after this movie where she's in Europe and she's kind of like on the run. It's like a To Catch a Thief type of movie. And they said she did that movie because she's like, I'm not going to Taiwan and doing another movie where I'm there for 3 months, like hurting myself constantly, doing crazy action fighting. Like I just want to do like an easy, fun movie. So that was pretty interesting. They talk, she was married to Dixon Poon, who is the D, I believe, in D&B Films, who was like just really, really wealthy guy who was financing films at the time. And they got divorced, but apparently she still had a really good relationship with him. And she's like the godmother to one of his kids. And like they still talk regularly and stuff like that. Arna does like a really interesting analysis of the action scenes, like what types of shots they're using, like wide shots, close shots, the editing, like how everything is stitched together and why it's done that way for the most impact. Because Arna is a filmmaker, so to me it's always interesting to hear his analysis of that kind of stuff. There's a scene, the scene I mentioned with the fire and stuff like that. They talk about Sam Raimi in that scene, and I never would have thought about that, but once they mentioned it, I was like, oh, this is kind of Sam Raimi-esque. And then Frank, which is fantastic. Frank has a whole big section about Richard which I knew basically nothing about him. I love him. He's probably my favorite Hong Kong comedian. Like I love him as an actor. Knew basically nothing about his life. He was like a struggling actor in London. He was trying to be an actor there, and he was like working in restaurants in Chinatown and stuff like that. And then he and his wife moved back to Hong Kong. And if I heard this correctly on the commentary track, his wife opened a hair salon and then became Bruce Lee's hairstylist until he passed away. Like all this really fascinating stuff I never knew about him. There's a really great bio of him. Frank analyzes his character actually, and how Frank thinks he's kind of a parody on like the man with no name trope that you see in like a lot of the Western films, obviously the post Clint Eastwood kind of stuff. And there is kind of a Western influence on this movie too, and like a bit of a Kurosawa. I mean, it's, to talk about the essay again and this idea of borrowing things from other movies and other film cultures, it's so interesting to me the way that there's this endless kind of back and forth with early American Westerns like John Ford hugely influenced Kurosawa and other Japanese filmmakers like that. And then those Chambara, the Jidaigeki, like the samurai films basically, were a huge influence on the spaghetti westerns, but also Hong Kong films in the 60s and 70s with the Shaw Brothers stuff and Chong Che and Jimmy Wang Yu and that kind of stuff. And then that influence filtered back to Hollywood and then back and forth. It's so interesting because I watch stuff and I'm like, is that John Ford? Is that Sergio Leone? Is it Kurosawa? Like, I see all of them and I don't know the filmmaker, so I can't ask, where did you get that from? It's just so interesting to me. One more thing I will say regarding the Spielberg influence on this film is this movie does a really good job of having escalations and reversals within the action scenes. So it's not just perfunctory action. It's not just like you sit there and you watch two people fight and you know who the good guy is and you know they're going to win and it's just kind of the spectacle of the fight. There's a lot of back and forth. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark is a great example, right? Like, you know, you see them walking through the woods, and then the guy pulls a gun on Indy, and then Indy whips the gun away. So that's a reversal right there. Plot twist: the guy pulls the gun. Reversal: the Indy knocks it away with the whip. Then they go into the kind of whatever it is, the cave type of thing where they find the idol, right? And they get past all these booby traps, but reversals of like, oh, there's booby traps. Oh, we got past them. So back and forth, right? Between like you're fearful that they're gonna get hurt. You're hopeful they're gonna be okay, and then he grabs the idol. Oh, good, they got away. And then the boulder comes, and then the Alfred Molina character steals the idol. But then I'm spoiling Raiders of the Lost Ark. Maybe you haven't seen it. What are you doing with your life? Turn me off and go watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. That movie's a goddamn masterpiece. I watched it again like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, you can't, like, it's like, it's so good it hurts. I had a professor in film school who used to say that. He was from Austria. It's so good it hurts. He would say it like that about movies that were just so ridiculously well made that you just like, ugh, you just left speechless by them. Raiders of the Lost Ark is like that. I'm sorry. I know it's a silly, frivolous movie. It's freaking ridiculous. It's preposterous how good that movie is. And so that kind of back and forth within the action scenes, you're going back and forth between hope and fear. This is a big screenwriting thing, right? You have hope on the one hand, fear on the other hand. You go back and forth between those. You create the ultimate experience for the audience in terms of their emotional involvement in the film, right? And it's reversals so that it keeps you guessing in your mind while keeping your emotions engaged in the film too. This is a very Spielbergian thing. And this movie does that really, really well. So the movie is Magnificent Warriors. Just buy it. Like, fucking A. Come on, it's fantastic. This is an amazing release. It's a great movie. It's Eureka Entertainment. It's Michelle Yeoh, 1987. Just perfect 80s Hong Kong popcorn flick. I thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.